When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. Oh my God, are you still with me? After that? I hope so, because we're gonna make pizza crust today. We're gonna make a focaccia bread, we're gonna make pizza bianca, and we're gonna make a sandwich called pizza bianca with mortadella. So I bet you never thought of focaccia as a pizza, but it actually is. It's one of the most traditional pizza crusts in Italy. So we're moving now to central Italy, and we are going to make focaccia, which is a flat dimpled bread. And nowadays, you know, a lot of people like to put designs in it, so you kind of press olives and tomatoes and you make all these flowery, pretty patterns. We're gonna do just a basic, simple focaccia bread, the traditional way the Italians do. So what we wanna do is start with a mixing bowl and some warm water. We're gonna add yeast. This is gonna give some rise to our bread. It's gonna add some puffiness to the crust. So yeast likes warm water, about 110 degrees. So we're gonna put that in, and I'm using an active dry yeast. When all else fails and you can't rip it with your hand, I'm gonna use a knife. You could use scissors, because apparently this one's giving me trouble. So, oh, there we go. Come on, happy little yeast. So we're gonna put that kind of sprinkled over the warm water, and we're gonna stir it just a little bit. We want that to kind of bubble and get frothy. So while that's working on activating, let's get this set up. We're gonna use a dough hook. So you don't wanna use a paddle. Usually your mixers come with 3 different attachments. You don't wanna use the whisk or the paddle. You wanna use the dough hook. And we'll get that fitted on there. Okay, and we're starting to get some bubbly yeast in there. So let me raise this up. And we'll get this on kind of slow. And so I purposely wore a patterned dress today because I get flour all over me, and I thought this would hide it more than a solid dress. So that was the fashion choice today. Slowly add the flour. And once that's in, we can actually increase the speed. And I'm going to use a spatula to kind of scrape down the sides. I'm going to stop it to do that because otherwise I might have the flour explode all over me. It's kind of like kneading it with your hand. It just does a more efficient job. That's why we're using the stand mixer. But if you did need to mix this by hand, you could do it. And as that starts to come together, we're gonna add some honey. This actually is an Italian forest honey that I'm using. There are a lot of different great Italian honeys that you can use. A lot of beekeepers in Italy, and you know, honey and bees are what make us have flowers and fruits and vegetables. So we love our bees and their honey they give us. So we're gonna put some of that in there. And the yeast like sugar too, it's food for them. So adding the honey not only gives the focaccia a little bit of flavor, but it also helps feed the yeast that's in the dough. We'll get a better rise with that in there. Okay, I'm gonna add a pinch of salt, just so it doesn't just taste like flour and water. And then we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil. So we get a nice dough consistency. And once that comes together, we'll stop the mixer. We're just about there. There we go. So our dough is ready to take out of the mixer. So let's Take it out. I'm gonna actually let it rise in this same bowl, but I wanna make sure that I get what didn't get caught on the dough hook in there. So, a little bit of a knead, not too much. The more you knead dough, the gluten, which is a protein, tightens up in the dough. So that's why you let it rest, not only so that it gets air in it and rises and you get that fluffiness in your pizza dough, pizza crust, but also letting it rest helps release those proteins that tighten up. So we're gonna put it back in the bowl. We're gonna cover that with a cloth. And that actually is going to rest for about 2 to 3 hours. We want it to double in size. Keep this somewhere warm. If you had your oven on, you can set it on the counter next to the oven, just someplace where it's warm. That'll help that yeast get those air bubbles in there. So our focaccia dough has been resting for a few hours. It is doubled in size. And you'll notice too when you pull it out that it's a lot lighter, the texture of it, from when we first put it in. So now we want to press it into our baking sheet. We want to coat baking sheet with oil. And if you don't mind getting your hands dirty, let's just spread that oil all over the bottom of the pan. And we're gonna put this in and we're just gonna stretch out the dough. We're gonna stretch it out so it fills the pan. Reminds me of playing with Play-Doh when I was a kid. And we'll stretch it out, and then we're gonna let it rise again for another 90 minutes. But before we do that, we wanna get those classic dimples that you see in a focaccia bread. So you wanna just kind of use your fingers, get those nice dimples in there. And now we're gonna cover this and let it rest some more. So our focaccia dough has rested for 90 minutes. I went and took a nap for 90 minutes. I'm just kidding, I didn't. My hair would not look this good if I took a nap. But this is ready to go in the oven. So we're going to, and you notice, see how it's fluffier than it was when we first put it in the pan. So what we wanna do, we want to take a little bit of olive oil and water and brush the top. This is gonna get it a nice golden color when it bakes. So pretty. And this just gets topped with some flaky sea salt and rosemary. If you're using dried rosemary, you could put it on before you bake it. If you're using fresh rosemary, I suggest you put it on after so that it doesn't brown in the oven and you have that nice green color. So we're gonna sprinkle it with our salt. Who doesn't love salt on their bread? And a little bit of rosemary. And then this goes in a 425-degree oven for about 20 minutes. So now we're gonna make pizza bianca. This pizza crust is very similar to a focaccia, so we're gonna use the same procedure we did before. We're gonna start with some warm water. We're gonna put it in our mixing bowl. We're gonna pour in the yeast, and guess what? I opened the package. Sprinkle that in. Now, we used honey before. Remember I said that sugar kind of feeds the yeast? So I'm actually gonna add my sugar now. This is hungry yeast. And let that grow, it'll grow worm, glimmer, glimmer. By the way, yeast is not a worm. Okay, so let that sit for a second. We're gonna get it set up on the mixer again. We're gonna use that same dough hook. And once that's bubbly and frothing and we know that it's kind of grown up, we're going to, oh, it's grown up. It's not a child anymore. We're gonna go ahead and start to add the flour. And I'm using a bread flour. It's not, you can use a all-purpose flour, but I'm using a bread flour, which is traditionally what they use in Italy. How'd I do? Yay, no flour on me. Okay, so we're gonna let that kind of mix up. We're gonna add a pinch of salt. We're gonna add some olive oil once this comes together. And again, if you're not seeing that the flour is getting incorporated enough, you can stop it and kind of scrape down the side so it gets more into the liquid. It's very mesmerizing. You could like meditate watching this. Okay, it's coming together nicely. Beautiful. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil just to bring it all together. Perfect. Okay, we're gonna take that off the dough hook. Now this dough is a little bit more wet than the focaccia. So before I put it on our baking sheet or pizza stone, we're gonna actually, a couple things. This does normally have to rest like we did the focaccia. And once that's done, and it's nice and rested, and you've kneaded it twice, then we're ready to put it on our pizza tray. So to do that, we want to sprinkle some, this is semolina. It's a little bit more coarse than a bread flour. And you would take your dough, that's the sticky fingers. And we're gonna knead that. And unlike the focaccia that we put the olive oil down, we're not gonna do that this time. We're actually gonna put a little bit more semolina on our baking sheet. So this will get a nice crust and not stick. And I'm only gonna use half of this because otherwise it's gonna be a really big pizza. And we're gonna stretch it because I'm not good with the whole flinging it all around. But really what that process is stretching the dough. So it's the same thing. We're just gonna stretch it out. I like this to be called rustic. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And then because this is a white pizza, we're not actually going to put toppings on it. We're gonna drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil. I'm gonna put some garlic, some oregano, and rosemary just to give it a little bit of flavor. But really, that's all it gets. You can also put cheese on it if you like. But for our sandwich that we're gonna make, you would want to keep it very simple with just garlic and herbs. Ooh. So a little bit of garlic, a little bit of oregano. And some thyme. And then that's gonna go in the oven for just about 6 minutes. So we made focaccia bread. We made the dough for pizza bianca. Now I want to share with you one of the most famous sandwiches in central Italy. It is pizza bianca with mortadella. However, this dish traditionally, even though it's called pizza bianca, uses focaccia bread as the bread for the sandwich. So we've got our lovely focaccia that we made earlier, and I'm gonna cut that. And in Italy, when you get sandwiches or you get pizza, you don't order it, if you order it by the slice, you actually order it by the size. So you might say, I want this much or this much or this much, and then they cut it and weigh it, and that's actually how you order it. So we will do, I'll make a smaller sandwich. Okay, so we're actually gonna cut this in half. It makes a nice crispy bread for your filling. Oh, beautiful. And then I actually roasted some garlic, so I'm gonna put a little bit of roasted garlic as a spread. I've got some arugula here. You didn't see me do that. We're gonna put a little bit of olive oil on it. I'm gonna put a little salt and pepper on it just so it's dressed and not plain. So we want to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this just so it's plain. You don't have to actually add a lot of pepper. Arugula has a peppery flavor to begin with, but that way it's just not plain lettuce. I'm gonna put a little black pepper, not much like I said. This already has a peppery flavor. We've got the roasted garlic, some arugula, and then we've got our mortadella. This one is made with black pepper. You can get it with pistachio or pitacchio, as they say in Italy. And there you go. Pizza bianca with mortadella. Let's see how this tastes. The focaccia is beautiful with that salt. Such a light, fresh salad with the arugula. Wonderful sandwich. Now you see how easy it is to make pizza at home. The focaccia bread came out light and fluffy, pizza bianca was fun, and woo, that sandwich. How delicious is that? Have you ever tried that before? Well, for that recipe and more, you can go to my website, jenniferbasil.com, and make sure to watch me because I've got more episodes coming.